Okay. So if you talk about the objects that we have in TypeScript, there are like different ways in which we can create an object. But what is in general an object? So yesterday also we have gone through with it, but let's refresh it one more time. So whenever we start uh, working, or what we can do is like consider just an example that uh, we have something known as a car. So just consider an example like car is an object. Something is an object, like car is an object. Car can have a different properties, like it can have a color, it can have an object, it can have a brand name that which company it belongs to. It can have some kind of different models that it has. And it can also have some kind of functions like start, stop, and some other functions, right? So if you consider a car as an object, what did we discuss over here is car will have some kind of property and car will also have some kind of functions, right? So if we combine properties and method, that becomes an object. That means in programming language, an object is similar to a collection of properties and methods. Okay. The thing that we were discussing yesterday, and we had seen that whenever whenever in TypeScript programming language or in JavaScript programming language, wherever you see like something have been starting with curly braces, and inside that if there is something like key and value pair, that will be considered as an object in TypeScript. Okay, whenever you see in TypeScript that we have some kind of values in terms of key and value pair inside a curly braces is known as an object in TypeScript. It basically object stores the data as a key and value pair, as we have seen over here, which is like name1 equals to Rahul is 30 and so on. We were trying to discuss about a car object. So, and discuss like car is having some kind of color, it is having some kind of brand and also some kind of model, right? So how it will generally displayed in terms of object is, so it will be like, let's say color colon example red, then brand some value, let's say IB, let's say something like BMW. Okay, and the same way model also can be something which is, let's say, a Q4 example I'm talking about. So this is how we represents the objects in terms of key and value pair in TypeScript. Okay, this is a key. What is key? Color. What is the color the car is having? Then brand is a key and value, which is something. And then model is a key and value, which is something over here. So this is how, in general, a object will be represented in terms of TypeScript, which is inside a curly braces, and will be a combination of key and value pair. Okay. Now there are different ways in which we can declare an object. The first way that we have seen over here is this is known as, the first one is known as basic literal way. Basic literal object or literal object. What is meant by that is, whenever we directly create an object inside a curly braces having a key and value pair is known as a literal object. In terms of string, we had seen that whenever we try to declare the value directly, which is this one, this is known as a string literal. Whenever we declare a string using a single quote or double quote, is known as a string literal. In terms of the object, whenever we directly declare the value, which is inside the curly braces and a combination of key and value pair, is known as an object in TypeScript. And also, it is a literal way in which we can declare the object in TypeScript. Literal in the sense we have created a variable and assigned the value to a variable. Now this is also similar where we have created a variable which is obj and we have assigned the value to the variable, but this time we have assigned a value as an object. Okay. So this is a simple way. This is a very basic way in which we can declare the literal way. There are different ways in which we can create an object. We can access the data, but let's first see in terms of literal way. Literal in the sense directly assigning the value to a variable. Now we also know that whenever we have to get the value, we can directly use the object name dot key, or second way is object name. And inside the square bracket, we have to write the key, whatever the key that we have declared over here. This is key, this is value. And whenever we try to get the value by using square bracket, we have to provide the key in terms of a string. As TypeScript internally convert the object key internally converts the object key as string. It do not ask us to write it in the string manner, like something like this, but whatever the variable name or whatever the key name that we represent inside the object, that will automatically be converted internally in terms of a string. So the key will also be a string, and value can be different things. It can have a different data type that we have discussed earlier in terms of like the different data types. So we can say like name Rahul is 30, city something, and some other value in terms of, let's say, is employed equals to 2. So this can be something which we can represent in terms of object as well. And this is something like which is we have given a Boolean data type over here. Okay, so we can also write in this way as well. Like different data types we can write as a value, but whenever we write the key will always be represented as a string internally inside the TypeScript. Okay, that is known as a literal way, where we just declare the variable, just declare a variable and assign the value to a variable. Here we have assigned the value as an object, which is a combination of key and value paired inside the curly braces. This is exactly similar how do we declare in terms of JavaScript as well. Now, in terms of TypeScript, the second way that we have is known as inline types. This is also known as inline types. What is known by inline types? In this way, we also declare the similar variable, like we declare a variable and then assign a value to a variable, which is an object. Similar kind of things. But the only difference that we have over here is we have also declared a data type that we are trying to use for different key. So this basically strictly managed, like we cannot use name as number over here, address as number over here, or age as string value. But if you try to declare over here at age as 30, you will be able to declare, because this is a type inference where TypeScript able to decide what kind of value that you have declared based on the value that we have declared inside an object. Whereas in terms of inline types object, we are declaring the variable, we are declaring the data type of the variable over here as well, data type of the key. That means we are saying name should have to be a string, age should have to be a number, and address should have to be something else, which is string. Now, if you try to enter age as a string part, you can see that it is throwing us an error. It is saying type string is not assignable to a type number. But if you do the similar kind of things over here, it will automatically consider that this as a string. Whereas in terms of inline type, it will not allow us to declare any other data type apart from whatever we have declared it over here. Okay, so inline types object means we also have to declare the data type of the key that we are trying to store inside an object. And accessing the properties, accessing the values is exactly similar to however we have seen over here. Now let's also try to see like how will we be able to update the value inside an object? Yes. So we should be able to update the value, but how do we update the update in the sense, let's say we have given 30 over here, and now tomorrow we have to give like 31 example. So how do we provide that? How do we update the value inside an object? So first thing is that we have to access the key for whatever the value that we are trying to update. First things that we can see over here, which is object dot name one. Let's say age. So what it will give if we try to print over here, let's say CLG. Okay, so let me do one thing, which is this one CLG, and then so whenever we do this thing, this is an object name and this is a key value. And if we try to run this particular file, we'll see that this will result us something which is 30 over here, right? Whatever the value that it is having, it will print us the similar value over here. But what about if we try to update? So if we try to update, we know that this is the key that we are trying to update. So we have to access with obj.age. And if you want to update any value, you can directly assign the value that you want to update over here. Okay. Now, if you see, if you try to print, so it is very simple. Like how do we access the variable? How do we access the property from an object? By using object name dot key that we have provided inside the object. And if you want to update the value, you can just assign the value, whatever the value that we are trying to update. Now again, if we try to print the value, if we try to execute this particular file, you'll see that earlier it was 30 and now it has become 31. In inline part as well, you should be able to do in the similar way as we have declared over here. So in inline part as well, let's say we have declared a variable which is person over here. So we can just change this to person 31 and then person dot age. Now we know that originally we have declared the 30, and now if you try to enter this, try to execute this, we'll see that it has become 31. Whatever the type that we are trying to discuss, the updation part will be similar in all the type. Updation in the sense like we can change the value of the value of the key that we have declared inside an object. Okay, this was second way in which we can declare the value. Let me also write it. What are the different ways in which we can do? First is literal object. Second that we have is inline type object. Inline type object means here we directly define the values for variable. Inline means we also define the data type of the keys. Third way that we have is we can create by using type aliases. We'll see that what is type alias. Fourth way that we have is by using interface. Interface, if you have worked on Java, you might be knowing there is an interface, but that interface is entirely different than we have in terms of TypeScript. And fifth one we have by using the classes. Exactly similar, however, we try to do in terms of other programming language, which is example Java. There are a few other which we can discuss by using optional parameter. We can also declare an optional parameter. Optional parameter inside the object. We know that how do we declare an optional parameter? We have discussed this earlier. And we can also declare a read-only property inside the object as well. Okay, these are like not the way we declare an object, but this is something where we can create an object. Create an object with optional parameter as well as for read-only property as well. Read-only means whenever you make any property as read-only, you will not be able to update that key and value. Okay. So we have gone through with literal object, inline type object, and now let's try to see for using type alias. What happened is, third type is using type alias. So what happened over here is, if you see in this way, what did we do? We have provided an object that we have provided a data type for the key. Are you people able to follow the session?
Yes,
Okay.
Yes, sir.
If you have any, right, if you have any kind of doubts or confusion, please stop me over there itself so that I'll explain. Now, what happened in this case is we have defined a structure over here, right? We have defined a complete structure that how our object should look like. It means how our object should look like over here. Here we have defined this is an structure of an object. This is simple structure of an object where we have defined name should be a string data type, age should be a number data type, and address should be a string data type. So this is the structure that we have defined in defined to basically declare an object. Now, if we try to declare any value apart from the structure that we have defined, it will throw us an error. Example, if we just remove this, we have seen lot many times, but if you try to enter something, it basically warn us saying that we cannot use a number when we have a type as string. That means it is saying we have defined a structure where we have a name as a string type, but we are trying to store a variable which is of a value for the name which is of number types. That will not be possible. Now we have declared this as a structure, but whatever the structure that we have declared over here, we cannot use in other object. What I mean to say is, let's say if we try to again declare a person one, or let's say employee as an object, we cannot use the similar one that we have already declared over here. We have to again define an inline type, which is data type. Again, we have to define it over here as a structure, and then we can define the objects over here. Okay, if we also want to define the type. If we also want to define the type, then only we'll declare a structure over here. Else we can always use this kind of things where we do not want to declare any kind of structure. Whatever the value that we have given on that, it will automatically identify. Okay. Now here also we have to define the similar kind of value. Let's say again, if we are trying to create one more, which is let's say a car object example, we again have to define the similar object over here. If we are trying to define the same structure. Okay. If you have to declare an n number of object having the same structure, this will be a repeated part, right? This will always be a repeating for each and every object that we declare, right? So that's where a type aliases comes, where it says that we can define the structure, whatever the structure that we are trying to define over here. If we are trying to use the same structure in multiple objects, then we can define a structure by using a type. Okay, so it is saying we can define a structure by using a type. Type is a keyword available inside and type is a keyword which is available inside TypeScript, which basically works similar to however we define it over here. But this will whatever we define inside us as a structure, we will be able to reuse that structure as many as times we require. Okay, it is a very flexible way where we can define a structure one time and can be utilized at multiple number of times whenever we try to declare any values, any object. Okay, let's try to see what is the syntax of the type aliases way of declaring and way of declaring object in types. So the syntax is a simple that we define over here by using a type keyword, which is type. we'll just use a type keyword over here, and then we have to define a name of the structure that we are trying to define it over here. Okay. We just have to define name of the structure that we are trying to define using the type aliases. Okay. So what happened is, like, whenever we use a type aliases, it says that we can define the type of an object inline using TypeScript type syntax. This will be very helpful if we are trying to use the same structure multiple number of times for declaring an object. Let's say I'll just give the name as person. Okay. And how do, apart from that, everything will be same. There will not be any difference. We just have to declare the structure. How do we declare the structure? Let's say a person, or let's say I'll declare a car over here. I'll just say it as a car. And then this car will have some kind of, let's say name of the car. And this will only accept a string value. What we are trying to declare, we are trying to declare a structure of the data type that it should use. Okay. And then we can say it as, let's say, color is also, it will accept a string. And then let's say model will also accept as string. And then year of manufacturing, let's say year of manufacturing should only accept as number. Okay. So this is how we basically define the inline. This is how we basically define the uh, uh, like type using a type aliases. So it says that we can create a custom type alias to use or to reuse an object structure in multiple places, wherever or whenever we have to use the same structure that we have declared to do over here. Let's say example car. So at that point of time, we can declare the same. We can use this particular structure that we have defined it over here by using a type keyword or type. It is also known as type alias. That means alias in the sense we are trying to provide some kind of name to a variable, some kind of name to a structure that we have defined it over here. Now, what will happen in this case is, one thing that we have to remember that, let's say if we have defined the key as name over here, at that point of time, we cannot define something a name one. The key will always be same. However, we are trying to declare the key inside a structure. So what did we do over here? We have declared a name. We have declared a color. We have declared a model and year of manufacturing as well. That will accept a number as a data type. Now let's say we'll try to try to declare a variable which will accept a object. Now using this type aliases, whatever the type we have defined it over here with a name as car. So this car becomes now the structure of an object. Now let's try to see and then we'll see. So let's say I'll declare a variable which is car, right? And how do we declare an object? We'll declare an object by using, let's say, uh, something like, let's say, model will be basically the name of the car, but let's say something BMW. I'll just say it as a BMW. Then color, I'll just say it as white. Model, probably I'll just say it as C series. And then YOM, which is year of manufacturing, which I'll say it as 2024. Okay. So what did we do over here is we have again defined an object, which we have defined it in a literal way. Here as well, we have defined the object in a literal way. But if we have to define the structure that it should not accept anything other than the structure that we have declared, how do we have to do that is, if for every object, we have to place it like this, which is colon, and then define the structure, right? But if you use this as a type alias, or if you create as a reusable components, we have created a car as a reusable components over here. Now we do not have to write this kind of things. We can directly refer the variable that we have used over here to create an alias. Alias is some temporary name that we provide to a variable over here. So we have given, what we have defined is, we have defined a car as an object, and it will only accept the variables and the data type that we have defined inside this particular alias car. You see now on hover, it says that name should only accept string, color should only accept string, model should only accept string, and year of manufacturing should only accept the number. Now, if you try to change this, you should be able to see that it is throwing us an error. So this will be useful whenever we try to reuse the same structure for the multiple times. Again, let's say if I create two more objects, which is car1 and car2 example, we do not have to define this one as we have already defined, so we can directly reuse the same component over here as well. Okay, we can reuse the same component that we have defined it over here as well. So this is very helpful in terms of the development, like whenever a developer use a TypeScript at that point of time, this will be very helpful for define the structure so that they can define the structure and can reuse at multiple point of time. Whatever we are trying to go through is an important part for interview, might not be using in terms of the test automation. Okay, so we can define an object by using a type alias as well. Now, any question over here?
Yeah, Praveen, there are multiple ways to define the object here, like first and second step. Then we will follow generally these two steps in test automation, or like all the steps we will follow to create a object.
Right. Most of the time we'll follow the literal object itself
Yeah.
in our test
Okay.
automation. That is what I said, like these are different ways that we have to understand as a part of interview. But
Okay.
other than whatever we're trying to discuss, most of the time we'll be using a literal object itself as
Yeah.
a part of test automation. Okay,
Thanks.
right.
Uh,
The next,
Praveen,
yes.
what if we declare the empty object? What is the meaning of that empty object?
So whenever you declare any empty object, let's say I'll just declare a car 3, and we can just make it as empty object over. So this will just have nothing available inside this object. And you can later on also store the value by just providing the something whatever you want to store inside the variable, store inside the object. You can also
Uh, So we can use
store
it
it.
for the storage purpose, like what we.
Correct. Correct. We can take the help of this going forward as well. So you whenever you do not know like what kind of value that we have in the initial stage, we can declare an object, and after that we can define the value, whatever the value that we want to store inside an object.
Okay.
Then the by default data type will be any for this empty.
You can also define the data type over here.
Okay.
Let's say you just say it as a car over here and mention this. So what will happen in this case is whenever you try to define any value, it will ask you to define the value, but later on also you can be able to define the value over here. But whenever you try to define any data type, it will ask you to, inside the inline itself, it will ask you to define the value. So whenever we do not know that what kind of variable or what kind of value that we have to use, we will not be using uh, inline like structure over here to define. We can directly declare an object, and after that later on we can use the take the help of object to define the uh, values for an object. Okay. Um, okay. So let's move to the next one, which is using an interface. Interface is like entirely different in terms of entirely different in terms of other programming language, which is like in terms of Java. Here, whenever we hear the name as interface, this also used to define and structure of an object. Interface basically are a way in TypeScript to define a structure of an object. However, we have defined by using a type, we should be able to define the uh, define by using interface as well. Then you might be knowing what is the difference between like interface and then type. Basically, both are almost similar. The only difference is like we can also represent some kind of complex types by using type keyword. Complex type in the sense we can define example if I talk about you can define the similar things as part of the test automation by using type and interface. But using a type, it says that we should be able to define some kind of complex types. Uh, just that means like, what happened is like if you want to also declare something which is, let's say, an object inside another object. So what we can say it as define it as is as an object. So inside the object, you can also define another object. So this is like more complex way. What we are trying to do is we are trying to create an object inside another object. So all those things will be able to, or like we will be able to do by using the type alias. In terms of interface, it is also similar, but in whenever we try to create an object structure by using interface, it is exactly similar to type, but type also handles some kind of complex scenarios as we have discussed just now. Okay. So example, if you talk about how do we declare as we have seen over here, which is like type. We have declared just a type over here, but whenever you try to use an interface, you just have to define an interface over here. Okay. And at the time of declaring the interface, we do not have to provide any equals to symbol. The difference is like, uh, let's say cars, I'll just say it as cars. So difference in terms of type by using a type aliases and interfaces, whenever we use a type alias, that means we are temporarily providing a name for an object and storing a structure inside that particular object. Whereas in terms of interface, we just use an interface name and then whatever the property that we have to define as an structure. Okay. This will also work in the same way as we have checked it for the um, using a type alias. Now, if you see over here, we have just given a name which is cars, and whenever we have to access this or whenever we have to use this structure that we have created using an interface keyword, how do we do that is we'll just say it as, let's say, object name equals to whatever the value that we have to provide it. We have to provide the value for an object. But before that, we also have to declare an structure over here. So we have to declare the structure over here. Now, if you hover over on this, it is saying an interface cars. What did we define over here? It is completely an structure. So the same value that we have to define over here as well. Now we have to say it as, let's say, I'll just make it as string, and then this will be a number. So let's make it as 12, or let's say 2023. Okay, so there is no difference we can observe over here in terms of a type aliases and in terms of object. We can simply define the structure by using either a type keyword or an interface keyword over here in TypeScript. Okay, so this is another way where we can define the structure of an object. This is not something that we can define the object. This is just a structure defining for an object. Here by using type also, we can define or declare the structure of an object using type aliases way of declaring object structure. This is another way where we can define the structure of an object. And following that, we can use basically this for the multiple objects. That means this is a reusable components that we have made it now inside the TypeScript, so that it will be helpful for us in defining the structure, and based on the structure, we'll be able to use that. Okay. And now the main question comes as using a classes. Okay, so we'll discuss what is class, how do we declare the class in TypeScript, and how can we create an object. So what happened in terms of classes is, how do we create a class in TypeScript? We'll discuss everything over here. So I'll take it as a last type of object that we'll be defining. Now I'll move to the few of the property that we have discussed, which is we can also define a optional property, and we can also define something which is read-only property. Now, how do we do those kind of things? Optional property and read-only property. Okay, let's try to see how do we do that. We have discussed it earlier, but let's see how do we do that. So whenever we have to define an optional property, this is just another property that we have available inside an object where we can define the optional property as well. Now, what is meant by optional property? So what we can see is we have defined it something. Let me take the help of any of the structure, or let's define in the inline way itself. I'll just say it as, let's say, employee. For the employee, we'll discuss name. We'll define the structure, which is name, which will accept a string, age, which will accept a number, department, which will again accept a string, and then salary. Let's say salary will be again a number type. Now, what did we define over here? We have just defined an object. We are trying to define an inline object where we have defined an object name, which is employee, which will accept these kind of value, right? So at the time of defining, what we have to do is we can define it in this way, which is name. Let's say a TypeScript example name is TypeScript. Then we have to follow a structure, which is colon. Is, let's say, it is having is as, let's say, 20 years. Then department, I'll just mention it as let's say tech, which is technology part, and then the salary. Okay, so here what happened is that if we do not define the salary over here, it throws us an error saying that property salary is missing, right? It is saying a property salary, which is missing over here, as we have defined a type object, which is this one, but we have defined the value only for the three particular properties. Now here forcefully it is forcing us to declare the salary as well. Let's say 20,000 exactly. Okay, so we have defined everything in the same way. Cannot redeclare block scope employee. We have declared, I believe, employee somewhere else. Okay, so let me comment it out here. So now if you see, this is exactly similar. However, we have defined the structure. But let's say if I do not have to define the salary, if I do not want to provide the salary information, how can we skip these kind of things? Or if for some value we have to define the structure, then how can we define, how can we utilize those kind of things, right? So for that, we have to make this property as an optional. How do we make the property as an optional? By just placing a question mark on the property that we are trying to define, on the key that we are trying to define. So what it will say is, now it becomes not this property, whatever we have defined becomes a optional. Now, if you see, let me remove this question mark and then you hover over on this and it is saying a property salary having a data type as number. But you place it over here, a question mark. Now see what will happen. It becomes either number or undefined. So pipe symbol basically defines is an or. Okay. Now it says that either number or undefined. What is meant by that? Whenever you provide a value, you have to provide it in the number format itself. You cannot provide other than number. If you want to provide, you have to provide in a number itself. Or if you want to skip, you can skip that as well and it will not complain anything because this key value or this property becomes the optional property of an object now. Okay, this is known as optional property in object. So we can define a property which is not mandatory and it will not ask you to define the value or define the object property inside the object. We can simply write it a question mark on any of the property and we'll just define that as an optional property. What is the use of optional property? An optional property will be basically a property that may or may not uh, available inside the object or may not define inside an object. Okay, and whenever we have to mark any property or any key as optional, we just have to place a question mark over here. Even if you make it name as an optional, you can define it over here by just placing a question mark. And if you remove this, object will not throw us any kind of error or TypeScript will not throw us any kind of error because this value is considered now as an optional property. But if you remove this, it will throw us an error saying that name is missing. Okay, so that is an optional property we can also define on an object. A second is read-only property. What is meant by read-only? It name itself suggests that it is a read-only property, right? Name itself suggests that it is a read-only. That means only you will be able to read the value, but you cannot do any kind of modification. So what it says is a read-only property is a property that can only be assigned once at the time of object creation. Okay, at the time of object creation, we can assign the value to a property which is read only, but after that we cannot modify it. It cannot be modified. It cannot be modified after declaration. That means read only. We do not have control on the value which you can define, which we can update. Let's see over here. I'll print the complete value, which is employee. Okay, and after that, I'll just update some value, which is employee having a department should become, let's say, sales. Earlier it was tech. Now it becomes a sales part of the department, which is sales. So we are able to update the value for any of the variable by just using object dot key. Now, if we try to run this, we'll see that the first earlier value, department value, was displaying as tech, and now this department is displaying as sales. So that means we are able to update the value. But let's say if you define something which is, I'll copy paste over here. And just copy paste the complete value and we'll change the employee one over here. Okay, we'll make the employee one. And let's say I'll just make the name, I'll remove the name from the optional part and we'll make it as read only. So the syntax for this is, syntax for defining is, let's say, let object name, then wherever or whatever the value that you want to define inside an object, which will be a read only, before the property, we have to make it as read only over. Before the property name, we have to just place it as read only as a key, so that this name now becomes a complete read only value. Now let's say we'll define a name as well, and we'll say it as, let's say, Rahul example, or let's say John example. Okay, now we can see that this name is a read only property. Now we are trying to print the, let's say, employee over here, and this we are trying to do, which is name1 equals to some value, which is, let's say, Peter. Okay, and you try to print this particular value as well. Now here itself in TypeScript, it will throw us an error saying that. So in terms of TypeScript, it will basically throw us an error saying that we should not. This is not the value. It will throw us an error saying that cannot assign to name because it is read only property. If we try to run the try to basically run this value, which we have defined it over here, and you can see this that it is able to define. It is basically able to replace it over here, which is name colon Peter, but it gives us a value that it wants us over here saying that you cannot assign the name because it is just a read only. Okay, we can provide the value whatever the value that we have defined it over here, but in this way it wants us saying that you are trying to change, but that is just a read only property. How do we define the value? By using name, which is employee1, and then whatever the value that we have defined. It just throw us an error, but it will not stop us from the execution part. It will define the value, however we are trying to define, but it wants us saying that we cannot assign to name because it is just a read-only property. Okay, now let's also try to see. Okay, I'll come back to again this point in later part of our session for the read only, where we'll discuss like for around 10-15 minutes in detail, like how do we define this, like why it is able to make the value over here and so on. But let's go to a class declaration in terms of TypeScript, how to declare a class. And so I'll just make it as class.ts. Now, how do we declare a class or how do we declare a class V? That means how do we declare a class in TypeScript? How do we create an object of a class? And what is in general a class, right? So earlier we have seen everything that we have defined is just a file. Okay, if you have to define a class, okay, if you have to define a class, how do we define a class? By using a simple keyword, which is class. Let me define some other name. Let me provide some other name, which I'll see it as, let's say, employee as a class name. Okay, so I'll just make it as employee. So how do we define a class in TypeScript is to declare this, the syntax of defining a class is say class, and then syntax for defining a class is, it's a very simple in terms of defining the class syntax. It is use a class keyword and then provide a class name, whatever the class name that we want to provide over here, just class name. And whatever the properties and value that we have to define inside a class will go inside a curly braces. Whatever the what is class? Class basically consists of different types of properties and different types of method. Earlier, we were talking about an object, which is car. Car is also having a property. Car is also having some kind of method. So class is something, what is an object basically? Object is a blueprint for a class, right? Blueprint in the sense, object will have idea of whatever it is available inside a class. Class basically consists of a methods and property. What is methods and what is property? Methods is also known as function, where we can define some kind of business logic inside the method, some kind of logic inside a method or function so that it can be reusable going forward. And what is property? Property is a variable that we are trying to declare. Okay, but there is a slight difference in terms of class and how do we declare a property outside of the class. So how do you declare a variable over here or a property? To declare a property in terms of TypeScript, and but why do we declare a class? First, let's try to understand like why do we declare a class? So why do we declare a class is whenever we have to use a property and method multiple number of times. Let's say I have created some kind of method, some kind of functions inside this. I have created a function which is add to over here. But this add to we will be able to utilize inside this particular file itself. But if I have to use the same function in many of the classes or many of the files, how can we use that? So that's where we take a help of class so that we can define a function or a method inside the class, and whatever function or method that we define inside a class, we can utilize those method or function in any of the classes by by just creating an object of a class. Okay, whatever value that we define inside a class, either property or a method, whatever we define inside a class, we will basically be able to utilize that in going forward. We'll be able to utilize that in any of the classes by just creating an object of the class. Okay, so what it consists of, whenever we declare a class, we also have constructor to declare so that what is in general the constructor is. Constructor is a method which will basically be help, which will be able to initialize the value of a variable. Whenever we create an object at that point of time, whatever the variable that we define inside a class will be able to initialize at the time of creating an object. So let's say if we define, let's say key1 will have some kind of type, then key2 will have some kind of type. Key1, key2 is just a parameter or a variable that we are trying to define inside a class. Okay, we are just trying to define a variable inside a class. So we can define it inside a constructor. And why do we define inside a constructor? Example, whenever we go for page object model framework in TypeScript, we will create a locators, right? Locators to identify the element. We'll see that what is locators whenever we start playback. But we basically create a locator to identify the element on the web page, right? So whenever we create a locator, all those locator we will be placing inside a constructor. Why do we place it inside a constructor? So that whenever we create an object of a class, at the time of creating an object, all those values that we define inside a constructor will automatically be initialized. Now, if you already have worked on any other programming language, then defining a constructor is, let's say if you have worked on Java, then defining a constructor is similar to a class name. We define a constructor by using the same class name that we define it over here as a class name of the class. But in JavaScript and TypeScript, we define the constructor by using a constructor keyword. Okay, constructor is just a special function, special type of function which used to initialize the value of a variable. So however, whenever we try to define any value inside a variable, we just define it in this way, which is this dot key1 equals to key1. This dot key2 equals to key2. That means we are just trying to assign a value of a variable. This value, whatever the value that we have defined over here, that will be placing, or that will be providing as an argument at the time of creating an object. Let's say I'll just create an object for this particular class. And how do we create an object? By using a new keyword and then the class name. And at the time of creating an object, whatever the parameter that we have provided over here, this parameter we have to provide it over here as an argument. Okay. And whatever the value that we provide over here at the time of creating an object, this value will go inside the constructor and initialize the value of the variable that we have declared. So this is the variable, this is the variable, and this value key1 and key2 is coming from the object that we have created over here, or we will be creating whenever we create a class. Okay. And inside this, we can also create n number of functions as well. So let's say I'll just create a function which is info. And for now, I'll just write, will not print any kind of things. I'll just print it as, let's say, console.log. There's just a syntax, so we're trying to declare. So how do we create in an object? How do we create a method inside a class? Well, let's say I'll just declare it over here, something which is like this, and then we create a constructor which is name and age. And how do we initialize the value? By just placing it this dot age. And whenever we have to create a method or a function inside a class, we have gone through earlier that whenever we create a function, either we have to use a function keyword or we have to place it uh, using an arrow function, right? So there are different ways in which we can create a function by using a function name, unnamed function, which is anonymous function. But for that also we require a function keyword or else arrow symbol to create a function or a method, right? But here in terms of class, whenever we create any variable, whenever we define any variable, let's say I'll just define it as let I equals to 10. In general, we define a variable which is let I equals to 10. If you go outside of the class, we define a variable and it will not throw us any kind of error over here. We have just defined it, let j equals to 10. I'll make it as I equals to 10 over here. But if you see now, inside the class that we have defined, it is throwing us an error saying unexpected token, constructor method accessor or property was expected. That means it is saying that whenever we create a class, and inside the class, if we are trying to create any kind of variable, we do not have to use any keyword. It will automatically consider whatever the variable that we are trying to declare over here. So at the time of declaring the variable and at the time of declaring the function inside the class, I'm talking about inside the class, it do not require us to declare a variable keyword, which is var let or const, and a function keyword for declaring the function. But if you define it outside, it will throw us an error saying that what is this basically? It is saying expected semicolon. What is generally it is unable to identify. So we have to provide it over here, something like that, function keyword, and then it will basically pass it as a function, or it will be identified as a function. But whenever we define it inside the class, whenever we define a variable and method inside the class, we do not have to use a function keyword or arrow symbol over here. Function keyword in generally or arrow symbol over here. We just have to provide the name of the function and provide the parenthesis over here. Okay. So this is in general, how do we create a class? I'll take one more session for the class where we'll create a genuine class. We'll try to define a static, non-static variable, and we'll see like how do we access the properties and variable methods available inside a class in our next session once we connect for the next session.
Praveen, tomorrow we will have a class or not?